We have Jason Buttrill on with us. Hello, Jason.
Good morning, Glenn.
How are you?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, I'm concerned about what's happening in Russia. And I think we learned on this program, who was it, Stu, that we had on? Oh, it was Jack Carr. We had on earlier this week, and he dumbed it down for us. He's a fiction writer, and he dumbed down what was going on with the military in Russia and explained they're out of troops because nobody's having babies because everybody's, like 50 years old and a drunk. And I say that half joking. I just saw a report that, 60% of the men are alcoholics in Russia. Is that possibly true? They're just living on vodka. Anyway, and so that's one of the reasons why they went into Ukraine, and one of the reasons why Sweden and Finland are so nervous, because they need to annex countries to be able to have youth to be able to fight in their military, because it's getting older. They're not having children, and nobody's in the military. Is that right, Jason?
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk last week and a couple weeks ago that they were going to continue to expand. Many people in the media were hearing the word Transnistria all of a sudden out of nowhere, and they were becoming military experts, which I thought was pretty funny.
What is Transnistria?
One of the breakaway regions, similar to the one like Abkhazia over in Georgia.
Okay.
The ones that it's one of those cold. It's some of those like used to be kind of hot wars, but are now cold wars, where there's just a bunch of Russian troops sitting in other people's countries. It's pretty crazy.
All right.
But the problem is that Russia doesn't have the troops. They don't have the equipment. There's not an infinite supply of this stuff, and they are losing it like it's a candy in a fourth grader's
Because
classroom.
they went through so many. The loss of troops has been so high, and they're conscripting people now, but there just isn't enough people to, have a 1,000,000-man army anymore, right?
No. And you're exactly right. And some of the videos that I'm seeing that are coming out of Russia now is, they're transporting by rail across from Siberia these World War II era vehicles and sometimes civilian vehicles over into Ukraine because they're losing so many tanks. In fact, this week they lost one of their most advanced, very, very proud tank. I think it's the T-91, I believe is what it is. It's their brand new one. They lost one of those in Ukraine, and those are severely limited. So it's hurting. Western supplies are hurting.
Did we know this, Jason? Because Jack Carr did. I mean, he's a fiction writer. He writes about this kind of stuff. He did. He said he finds it inexcusable if we didn't know this.
Well, it's interesting that, the Russian, the equipment, a lot of people, and me included, have been telling for a long time that Russia is not a global superpower anymore. They're a regional power, and they're very limited in what they can do.
Except for nukes.
Except for nukes. Yeah, that's really all they have.
All right.
And I keep hearing people talk about, this. There was a lot of reporting about the sinking of the Moskva, which is their flagship in the Black Sea, which is very, very significant.
Because that was a newer ship, the Pride of Russia, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And so that's a significant loss. But I do think that Russia is going to be limited in how they respond to this.
Okay, so wait a minute. I want to get to that here in just a second. But it's important, I think, to set up that Russia is not the superpower that we all grew up thinking they were. They don't have the military. They do have all of the nukes. But beyond that, they are not a superpower. They're outmatched by Ukraine and what we're sending, okay? And this is going to be a huge, humiliating loss like what we just experienced, and we didn't lose, but what we just experienced in Afghanistan. They are being exposed now as a paper tiger. They just don't have any teeth anymore. And so that makes, if it was Ronald Reagan or even Donald Trump, we wouldn't be in this situation. But if we were in this situation and they came into office, I could see somebody like that who understands power through strength collapse them. Would you agree with that? Expose them, collapse them. We don't have to deal with them anymore.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I think that Washington and the Biden administration completely shifted strategies as well on this. I think that when they saw what they were trying to do, which was take all of Ukraine, and failing so miserably, they were like, let's push further and see how far we can take this.
Okay, so now here's the concerning part. Yesterday, we just admitted that, yeah, we targeted the ship. We gave them all the intel. They couldn't have done it without us. Why would we do that? I don't remember. I mean, this is the way it's always been in the Cold War. They were always targeting our troops and helping the other side, et cetera, et cetera. We knew that, but I don't remember any Soviet leader going, yeah, look at us. Okay? They would go, we don't know what you're talking about. But you were like, we got pictures of you. Don't know, fake pictures. American press, fake pictures. That's the way it used to happen. I don't know of a time that Russia or America has ever said, yeah, our covert ops, look at this. It's so dangerous, right?
It's dangerous. It's. I don't know if you would call. I guess you can call it escalatory. It's very, very. It's different from that part right there. Is different from the way the Cold War wars were fought in the past.
Correct. We always had plausible deniability, even if it wasn't plausible to the experts on each side, okay?
Right.
We didn't announce it to the world. So it is when Russia is saying, don't get involved in this war, we are already involved in this war. And now, yesterday, for some unknown reason, we just announced it to the press. Yep, that was us. Okay.
Because, well, hold on. That reason, I think, is important if we could stop on that for a second. Because the president of the United States has nothing to run on. Nothing. His approval ratings in every category are terrible. The only one that he looks even moderately okay on is his support for Ukraine. And so I feel like the reason they're promoting this domestically and making a big deal about every little victory they can is to claim credit in the one area that's moderately popular. And that's terrifying.
I think that is probably true, coupled with this idea from somebody that we can expose Russia and Russia will look weaker than we looked in Afghanistan. And so the world forgets about Afghanistan and goes, yeah, Russia is nothing.
It's tied together, though.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the combination of the two, I think. Now, here's the scary part. Let me just flip the script here a bit. Let's just say that there was a Soviet pact or a Russian pact, and it included Venezuela and Cuba and other places in South America, which we already know that's what's happening, right? We all know that. Mm-hmm. And they decided that, or there was talk that they were going to go into Mexico and make Mexico part of that pact. Okay, if that were happening and we had evidence of that, we wouldn't do what Putin did, but if they were putting, let's say, missiles in there or whatever, we would go across. We'd cross into Mexico and stop that, okay? It would be in our best interest, I think, to do that. We would at least threaten to do it. We wouldn't have done what Russia did, but if the evidence were there, we would go in to destroy those things that Russia was doing, okay? I'm just flipping the situation. Now, if our army was so depleted and Russia was strong and they just kept funneling money and they got other people in South America to start helping and we had nothing and we knew that their next thing was to invade us, or we strongly suspected, and we had nothing, wouldn't we launch tactical nukes and wouldn't the country before we shut the lights out on this thing, this is the only option we have left. We don't have the troops. We got to get them out of there. Let's scare them away because Russia's not going to launch nukes and destroy America. They want it. So they're not going to launch a full-scale attack. Let's just lob a nuke in and flex our muscle and say, back off. Wouldn't we at least seriously consider that?
So, Glenn, you sound exactly like the conversations from I've read from the history books from Khrushchev. Khrushchev was thinking the exact same thing in the early 1960s.
Correct.
He was like, I am not sending military equipment into Vietnam because I don't want another Cuban Missile Crisis on my hand.
Right.
I don't want to tempt the United States to start doing what you just said, sending tactical nuclear bombs, low-yield nuclear weapons. And that all ended once Brezhnev came into power in the mid-1960s. All that ended. He said, you know what? He said the same thing. He said, the United States is a paper tiger. Our equipment right now is actually more advanced than the United States was. And it was at the time. Our pilots had never seen SAM missiles before. We had never seen them. The United States lost 2,000 or just over 2,000 military planes, including pilots, due to Soviet surface-to-air missiles. Over 10,000 Soviet troops went to Vietnam and supplied, I can't remember, it was over 2,000 tanks, Kalashnikov rifles. Their aid to Vietnam was far more than what we've given Ukraine right now. This is how the Cold War era militaries were fought.
And I think this is different than any place else. If we were in Afghanistan, we wouldn't have done tactical nukes if we were losing. We would just pack up and go. The American people wouldn't hear of it. Okay. But because Russia is so ingrained in us, and this is a fight for global superpower status, I could see them before they step off the stage and lose. I could see them absolutely going, lob a tactical nuke in.
Yeah. Well, and it's part of their doctrine. Mm-hmm. It's part of and that's one of the things that Jack Carr probably alluded to. Is we kind of overstated what the Gerasimov doctrine was, which was their new military doctrine. Which, as of now, looks like the Gerasimov doctrine was, let's just send over some World War II equipment and let it get blown up in the middle of mud season in Ukraine. It's pretty poor. But the end state of the Gerasimov doctrine is escalate to de-escalate, which means tactical nuclear weapons to scare everybody else off the battlefield and go, oh, let's hit the peace table and give Russia some concessions.
And I have to tell you, if you look at it from their perspective, knowing that they're exposed, they're done. They lose this, they're done. They're exposed. That's truly terrifying, because from their perspective, it would kind of make sense. And the other side, if you take Putin out, he doesn't do it. You take Putin out, you have the chance of getting somebody who is an old Soviet kind of mindset that is like, no, you could get somebody who's like, we are rebuilding this superpower, and damn it, I'll use nukes.
Yeah.
I mean, you could
go either way.
It could go either way. It's really dangerous.
That's the most likely outcome I see for this, because it's very easy for a group of oligarchs and some generals to blame it all on Putin and say, look, it was the crazy guy that everyone knows has brain problems and cancer.
Okay, so
let's just get rid of him.
So hang on, because Monday is an important day in the Soviet Union. So fill that out for me here in just a second. Okay, so Jason, give me Jason, by the way, is our head writer and former military intel guy. And so really watches the state of global politics and war. Give me the top two scenarios that you think are most likely to happen here.
Most likely scenario is what I just said. I think that the only way out, I think the Russians need a way out, and I think the only way out is to quietly have Putin go away. That is the most likely, in my opinion, because it gives them an out. It gives them someone to blame. And it says, hey, don't get me wrong, this is not going to get better. We're not suddenly going to get a Russian leader that all of a sudden agrees with the West. We are we're adversaries, and Russia and the Western Europe will always be adversaries.
But this will ratchet it down, at least for a time being?
Exactly. This will give them an excuse for them to be able to pull back and say and kind of blame everything on him.
Okay. Which I know he would love, which makes him more dangerous, I think. The other scenario?
Another scenario is, let me give you three. So another scenario would be them settling basically with Eastern Ukraine and drawing this out to a stalemate. Basically making it to what happen. Basically what it was since 2014, Eastern Ukraine, they'll stick with that.
Next.
Third is probably the more scary. And that is, this escalates to where every Russian general is in agreement, and they think the only way out is to escalate, to de-escalate.
So doesn't this make this other piece of the news that came out yesterday was Sweden and Finland said, we have a guarantee from America that if we ask, we're going to be a part of NATO. That's what started all of this, was just the idea that NATO was going to be expanded into Ukraine, which there was no truth to that at all. Finland is extraordinarily important to Russia. That's a major escalation, is it not?
Yes, and the Finns have a very proud history of kicking the Soviet Union and Russia's butt all on their own.
Yeah.
I don't really think they need NATO help on this. I see this as more worrying than anything else because, as you said, this is exactly what they said they were trying to stop.
And this gives Putin credibility, saying, see, I told you.
Exactly.
Of course, the reason why they're just trying to jump into NATO now is because Russia decided to invade Ukraine. I mean, like, they weren't planning on doing this until Russia invaded Ukraine. And then they were like, wait a minute, we better freaking figure out a way.
But you don't announce it. You just don't announce it.
You just said one day, say, by the way, we're in NATO?
No, you say, if this thing escalates, right now, it could peter out. But especially 3 days before Victory Day in Russia, where Putin's got to beat his chest about the strong Russia, you don't escalate it.
It's terrifying.
It's truly terrifying.
Luckily, we have real experts at the helm that
my gosh.
they can walk this line perfectly.
Real grown-ups.
Yeah.
Real grown-ups.
Yeah.
Jason, thank you so much.